Okay, thank you everyone. There's a few more people coming, but we're not going to wait any longer. We've got guests here tonight. We want to hear what they've got to say. So, my name's Michael Hudson. I'm the President of the Combined Forums Council. We are the organisers of this activity tonight. So a couple of housekeeping things. First of all, in an emergency exit where you came in and through this door on my left. The restrooms are on my right, and a request from the barman, if you've got any bottles or drinks out there, when you finish, take them back to the bar, please. Make life easy for everyone. Okay, welcome everyone, and thanks for turning up on what we now know as a public holiday weekend, which a little bit of an error by us in choosing tonight, but that's the way the world turns sometimes. So let me quickly talk about the CFC. Our logo is on the screen. CFC has a history that goes back to 1978. It was formed as a direct result of the 1977 Firearms Act being passed through Parliament. And so a group of organisations decided to get together to try and make sense in how the regulations were going to be written for that Firearms Act. CFC was a front runner on that, and a number of major shooting organisations formed the group. I'll quickly run through them. The Antique and Historical Arms Association, the Firearms Traders Council, South Australian Clay Target Association, South Australian Field and Game Association, South Australian Revolver and Pistol Association, the South Australian Small Bore Rifle Association, South Australian Target Pistol League, I guess they're all South Australian organisations, and the Sporting Shooters Association of South Australia. So they were the founding groups back in 1978-79. The organisation was incorporated in 1981 after the regulations were finalised, and fast forward till now, most of those groups are still around. Most of them are still members of CFC. CFC has now 13 major state bodies and large clubs and 17 smaller clubs, representing around about 16,000 odd members of the shooting groups in the state. Tonight we have a few of the original founders, and I'll quickly run through a number of those people. The founder of the group was John Bennett. His second president was Brian Astell, followed by Bruce Tunstall, and then a number of other people, including Rob Lowe, Ray Cann, Rod Gibb, Keith Tisdall and myself who are on the executive. And we lead to today where our executive is myself as the president, my vice president Ray Khan on my left, and our current secretary treasurer Trevor Mitchell somewhere down there. Do you want to stand up, Trevor? You're a big tall guy, I can see you there, thank you. And the current executive have been off and on as vice president and president for the last 25 years. CFC has a role to play. Our constitution says that we are to be the representative body for all South Australian clubs, associations and other bodies or persons whose aims and objectives are similar to ours. We are to encourage shooting proficiency, competitive sports and national and international events, and promote education and public awareness of safe and proper ownership of firearms and the use of them. We also disseminate knowledge regarding to the ownership of firearms and support or oppose legislation or practices that are deemed not in the best interest or the rights to own firearms and the use of firearms in our community. We also support hunting and conservation groups that have a like interest, and obviously we make technical and scientific knowledge available to any interested party. And we do that in a number of ways by providing advice to our regulators, which is SAPOL. We also get involved in numerous expert advice, advising the courts on issues to do with firearms, and obviously we provide that information to any organisation, both state-wide and indeed nationwide. So our history is long, and our interest in firearms and our concerns with legislation, well, one could argue, has been right from the outset. The last time we as a group met together, we were debating the issues to do with the new Firearms Act of 2015 and the regulations of 2017. CFC, along with other stakeholder groups, met with then the Police Minister, who's now the Premier, Peter Malinotis, and over a period of months we debated all the issues to do with the finalisation of the regulations. Prior to that, CFC was involved in a number of issues relating in public meetings, dealing with the right of the Firearms Act, or the rewrite of the Firearms Act, to be held public meetings at the Gaza Community Club and other places around the city. And tonight we're doing that again, solely to inform you as best we can through our guests what the policies are of some of the people who will be involved in the election and potentially members of Parliament after the election. So I want you to welcome them all here tonight and thank you for attending. Before I hand over to our MC, thank you.
Better put my glasses on. Okay, to all lawful gun owners, welcome to our meeting tonight. I'm opening tonight's meeting with a catchphrase: we can't deal with what ifs, we need certainty. And this will make sense to you if you've been watching the social media pages. Look, before I kick off tonight, I want to make sure that this meeting has been convened by the CFC, Mick and Ray. These people do this stuff as volunteers. So people, if you can please appreciate, and I think these guys need a round of applause. They've got a lot of trouble to put on tonight. So thank you very much again, Mick. Look, my name is Gary Nolan. I'm the member of the SSAA, IPSC, SAPA, and the Southern Vales Practical Shooting League, and I'm the president of the Sturt Pistol and Shooting Club. I was recently appointed by a great group of people that we now call FOXA to be the spokesperson for FOXA, which is the Firearm Owners Collective of South Australia. And I've been invited by Mick tonight to speak and to assist with the MCing tonight and address you on the progress of what we're doing at FOXA. So firstly, I wanted to welcome everyone, and I particularly want to welcome our people tonight. So we have Nicola from the Liberal Party, MLC, a round of applause. Corey Bernardi from the One Nation Party. Ricky Levitt from the Nationals. We've got Deepa Matthew here from their Family First, and then we've got Shannon Foote. Now Shannon's here from the Fairer Australia Party, Fair Go Australia Party, which is Sarah Games' party. But Shannon is one of the, I think he's number 2. You're going to be number 2 behind Chris on the ticket for the Legislative Council. So, mate, nerves should go away by now. You can have a scotch after, mate. So we're all on your side, mate. So big round of applause for these people. Apologies to, we've got Mark Aldridge from the UFA, which is the United Voice Australia Party, and apologies from the conspicuous one, the Labor Party. Righto. Firstly, I want to make it clear that my views, I'll keep my views as apolitical as I possibly can. But I've also got to consider I'm basically surrounded by a parliament of politicians, or a veritable parliament of politicians and candidates. So it's probably going to make my job a little tricky tonight to keep in that direction. But Mick promised he'll keep me in line. Righto. So I make no apologies though for admitting my initial objective when I started this crusade 7 weeks ago was to disrupt the results of the next election. So we can't lose focus on the ability for 61,700 licensed voters to influence the next election, plus their families, of course. That figure was given to us from a credible source. That's through the Commissioner's Office, the Police Commissioner's Office. So I think that's about as accurate as you're going to get to the amount of licensed shooters we have in South Australia. Okay, the makeup of the current Legislative Council is what we're after. Currently, there is 11 people coming up for election. Legislative Council, for those that don't know, have 22 people in the Legislative Council. Of that, we've got 9 that are Labor, 8 that are Liberal. We've got currently 1 Green, and the rest are made up of independents with varying views on what we actually do. So you need to do your homework before you start doing preferencing, folks. That's my advice. Okay, so what we're doing tonight is a practical solution to address a political issue that arose through no fault of ours, right? We didn't do anything wrong. What we're doing tonight is trying to look after our interests, and that is it, right? So how did FOXA come about? We're all aware about the huge publicity that we had after the Bondi thing, and then the eventual omnibus legislation that was introduced. And we heard various comments. Well, that was about the time I thought, well, shit, I've got to do something here. We now are all feeling the effects of the federal legislation that's had been introduced. The federal effects, everybody knows, and we've got a couple of guys here that owns gun shops. We've got Peter Heggie down here who owns a well-established business down south, and he'll be feeling the effects now. You know, just getting stuff into Australia as an importer is impossible. It's just about impossible, right? So we're already starting to feel the effects, folks. It's not just, we can ignore this, put our head in the sand, this bloody issue's going to go away, because it's not. Look, from there I got concerned, so I started with convening a meeting at the Sturt Pistol and Shooting Club. We had a pretty good turnout. It was a hot day, but the issue that came out of it was a couple. I'm not going to go into the details, won't have time tonight, but we fail as a community to reach out to the broader community and educate our decision makers about our sport. And even this issue was raised 7 weeks ago. Nothing has really happened, right? Nothing has happened. 30 years ago, we had Port Arthur, and since in that 30 years, we've been waiting for that day to come. Guys, it's come, it's here, right? And if you don't do anything, don't blame the pollies, right? Seriously, we've got to look ourselves in the mirror and think, what have we done in the last 30 years? We've done bugger all, right? So we have to get off our backsides and do something. At least investigate who you're going to preference in this next election. It is vital. You need to speak to these people after the show and make sure that you're voting for the ones that's going to suit you. It was agreed at this meeting at Sturt that we needed to be more united as a shooting community. We wanted to see these peak bodies get together. We knew that was going to be a bloody challenge, and it's still a challenge. Anyway, the whole objective is that we have 1 or 2 voices representing the peak bodies, and that's what you basically got now. You've got Sephora, and you've got the one that I've been asked to head up, which is FOXA. Most importantly, we need to stay united. It was agreed that 61,700 licensed shooters could wield enough power in this election to disrupt the results. Surely, 61,700 shooters. We can have a real effect on this, right? We've got to get off our backsides and we've got to do something. Make sure we vote for the people that are going to protect us. Since that meeting 6 weeks ago, I've personally met with over 50 members of parliament, probably closer to 60 now. I've met a lot of the people over there on that table, 60 people. It's been an effort, but I've met with them and all candidates, including 5 current members of the Legislative Council, including Nicola Sanafani over here and Heidi tonight, Frank Pengello, Connie Benares and so on. So what else has happened from the original meeting at Sturt? We've received a firearms policy from the One Nation Party. We've received a firearms policy from the Libs. We've received a firearms policy from the National Party. We've got one also from Fair Go. That's Shannon's mob. We've got a firearms policy from Connie Benaros. Unfortunately, that's another apology. Connie couldn't make it tonight, but she is pro-shooting. And we've got a firearms policy from Family First, Deepa. So we've come a long way since that meeting at Sturt Pistol Club. We've got two collectives. One's called SOFOA, which I've got nothing to do with. Mick will give you an update on that later on. And then the other one is us. FOXA has been created to take the state in a direction we want. We are the people. I want you to all understand FOXA received the policies from these politicians, not from FSOA. That was because of us, the hard work that we did. In fact, I personally consulted with 3 of those parties already to establish their gun policy. That's what's called consultation, folks. And I congratulate those 3 parties for doing that. We commenced our social media campaign 5 days ago. I won't go into details. Mick's asked me to put that at the end, but it's going fantastic. And without you guys, this never would have happened. So thank you very much for what you've done. Many of you people would have received letters from your local Labor members and later from many different Labor MPs, all with similar wording. You know, you've read the Tony Piccolo letter, and you've read the letters from Catherine, I think her name's Atkinson, and then we've got Erin Thompson, and down my way I've also got Alex Dighton. The letters are the same wording, just with some changes at the very end and a different signature. Upon receiving these letters, I asked a good friend of mine, many of you will know him, he's a good bloke. His name's Kelvin Prescott. Kelvin was an ex-Supreme Court judge. He knows his stuff. And Kelvin gave me some advice, and he wrote me a letter back to these members of Parliament saying, we're not happy with what's in that letter. Now folks, this is not being political, this is just a critique. So upon receiving those letters, we replied on the 14th of February. Can you keep that date in your mind? 14th of February, it's important, because despite our efforts, we still don't have a firearms policy from the existing Labor government. You may have received an email on Wednesday the 4th of March with a video from SSAA's Tom Kenyon, now saying that he now doesn't like the Premier's letter because of the uncertainty. Well, that's been our catchphrase we've been using now for weeks. We don't want what ifs, we need certainty. And that's what we've been saying. If you look at our reels on social media, that's exactly what all of these champion shooters, including Libby Kosmala, have been saying to the public. We don't want it, what ifs. It's all nonsense stuff. We want certainty. You may have received an email from Tom saying that. It's up to you, go and have a look. Can anybody explain to me what Tom's on about there? He's asked for the firearm people to write a letter to the Premier congratulating the Premier on his firearms statement. So look, I'm just a little confused there. I'm just hoping someone can tell me what that all means a bit later. Okay. I am absolutely convinced that the letter drafted by my friend Kelvin Prescott was instrumental and escalated the importance of what we're asking for. This is certainty, and that's why then it was signed by Peter Malinauskas. He's the one that forced the arm of the Labor Party to do that. Without getting political, I think we need a quick critique on what this means. The letter says that South Australia exceeds national standards and no changes to firearm legislation are currently under consideration. But when you look at that closely, the message is filled with what ifs, qualifiers, vague assurances, not to give responsible firearms the stability that you people deserve. The problem is simple. The letter avoids committing to anything beyond present moment. It tells us what is happening today, but it tells us nothing about what's going to happen tomorrow. And when a community like ours has been subjected to years of shifting national conversation, speculation, and changes in gun laws, boy, it's getting hard, right? But just look what's happened in New South Wales recently, just after the Bondi massacre, and then last week in Tassie. In Tassie, the laws have changed. You're all aware of that.
Put your hand up if you're not aware of what happened in Tassie last week. Right, so you don't know what's happened in Tassie. So they've already changed their legislation to ban backyard straight pull guns. Those changes were will completely obliterate the IPSC type of long arm shooting. So why do what ifs matter? Well, it creates uncertainty. What if leaves responsible firearmers like us wondering what decisions might be made behind closed doors, such as the caveats that could possibly be associated with the submarine deal? It's a $30 billion deal. They don't just give away $30 billion, folks, unless there's caveats hung on that deal. And who knows what's happening behind closed doors between Mallee and Nalbo? I don't know. What I read was from the SSAA article last week, quote, it was quoting what was said in the Western Australian government. The SSAA said the government's idea of consultation, because this is what this letter's all about, consultation, was the government actually consulting with themselves, and they're patting each other on the back about how they went out and consulted about the stuff that we do. A statement that relies upon the word currently is not a commitment, it's an escape clause. To understand why the letter falls short, we need to be clear about what responsible firearm owners are asking for. We want certainty. We mean firm, unambiguous commitment that does not shift with political nonsense and future pressure or weasel words. We want certainty removes doubt. Certainty provides stability and allows people to plan their lives without the fear of sudden change. Clarity means transparent, straightforward communication that leaves no room for interpretation or hidden meaning. Clarity is the opposite of vague reassurance. Clarity tells us exactly what we can expect and exactly what policies will guide future decisions. The letter provides neither. Can I please ask you, what is more effective? Lobbying for the party that will look after you, or sending a letter to the Premier acting like some bunch of sycophants? I'm sorry guys, but I can't help myself. I won't be congratulating the Premier for his nonsense letter. You can wipe Mallee's bum with it if you like, seriously. On the other hand, we've received firearm policies, positions from all of these people that are represented tonight. So I say, my message to you all, we are the people. The politicians work for us. Their charter is to work for us. We can't deal with what ifs. We need certainty. That's me done. I'm going to start introducing these people, our guests tonight. So that's me done. Thanks very much for listening. So Nicola, you're going to be the first cab off the rank.
Thanks, Gary.
Can I sit in your chair next to Corey?
Certainly can.
Good on you.
Got it nice and warm for you. Thanks, Gary. Can I also just thank Mick and Ray and the CFC for hosting us here tonight. I've got a bit of a table there, so if it's okay, I might just get them to do a bit of a wave while I introduce them, Gary. So first of all, we've got our second candidate for the Legislative Council, the Honourable Heidi Girolamo, so she's also Shadow Minister for Health. We have our third candidate for the Legislative Council, Rowan Mumford. He's also repping our leader, Ashton Hearn. He is her Chief of Staff. Our first candidate for the Legislative Council, the Honourable Ben Hood, is an apology this evening because he's actually gone back down to Mount Gambier to see his family, which is few and far between at the moment. We have Amanda Hendry, who's the candidate for King. We have Christopher Jones, who's the candidate for Playford. We have Hussein Zaman, who's the candidate for Raynell. Trent Bernard, who's the candidate for Davenport. Michael Santagata, who's the candidate for Croydon. Ted Bolhosen, who's the candidate for Taylor. Soraya Birch, who's the candidate for Newland. And Scott Kennedy, who is the candidate for Moree Outer. As you all know, I'm Nicola Santafanti. Yeah, thank you. So as you all know, my name's Nicola Centofanti. I am a first and foremost a girl from Winky, but I'm also leader of the Liberals in the upper house. And I'm here really to articulate our party's position around gun laws. Let me be clear, South Australia already has some of the toughest gun laws in the country. In fact, we are not far off Western Australia. Don't get me wrong, we believe in strong laws to protect the community, but the focus has to stay where it belongs, and that is on criminals, not on compliant, law-abiding firearm owners. Thank you. So you all, as law-abiding firearm owners, should never be treated like the problem, because simply you are not. So our position is very straightforward. A Hearn Liberal government will not and does not support legislation that further restricts firearm ownership or piles extra regulatory burdens onto people like yourselves who are already following those rules. We've said it clearly, if elected on March the 21st, what you can expect from us as a team, and what we will deliver is no further restrictions on lawful gun ownership, including caps, tougher penalties for illegal firearms, better intelligence sharing, and we will not use South Australian taxpayer funds, your own hard-earned dollars, to strip you of your rights to lawfully shoot, because that is the certainty that you deserve. So let me be clear with that. But can I just say, you know, we can get up here and say anything, really. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what we have done for you as gun owners over the past 4 years in opposition. And what I can tell you is that we have always been a strong and consistent voice for the shooting and the hunting community here in South Australia. We have stood firm against the move to ban duck hunting here in South Australia by backing responsible, lawful hunters and the traditions of many regional communities. And I come from a regional community, so this is something that's near and dear to me. We have opposed Labor's unjustified hike of 400% for the duck and quail hunting fees. That's a massive increase on these fees that hit your pockets. That is going to hit hunters' pockets. And in my view, that is simply an attempt to ban duck hunting and quail hunting by stealth. So not only have we opposed it, but we have a policy that if we are elected on March the 21st, then we will reverse those hikes. We've spoken also about Labor's creeping attempts to further restrict hunting by stealth, and that is by the way that this Labor government banned bow hunting at the end of last year through proclamation. So what that means is that didn't even come into the Parliament. That wasn't even allowed to be debated on the floor of Parliament. They went straight to the governor and they banned bow hunting by proclamation. We've also been very vocal in calling out the government's approach to feral deer control, forcing aerial culling on properties, on properties, and basically. My concern with that is property rights. It should be up to the property owner for them to determine how they want to manage, how you want to manage feral deer on your property. But to force you into aerial culling, whilst there are other tools in the toolkits like recreational and commercial hunting, was something that we were very vocal against. So that is what we have done. For the hunting and the shooting community over the last 4 years, because we absolutely respect the role that you play as recreational shooters and as hunters, And we understand what it means for you. You know, I speak to so many hunters around the state that tell me that this is their way of life for them. You know, it is something that you've done, your fathers have done, your grandfathers have done, your grandmothers have done, and something that you want to teach your kids to do. You want to share this experience with your kids. Now, I just want to, Gary spoke about Labor's position, and so I don't want to touch too much on that, except to say that I don't think it's clear. The fact that they're using language that says there are no changes currently under consideration, that is not, in my opinion, ruling out changes into the future. It is not a commitment. It's, to be quite frank, I think, a way of avoiding a straight answer. And so I have been calling on Labor to clearly state that they will not introduce firearm restrictions over their next term. Because it doesn't matter what you're currently considering, it's what you're going to consider after the next state election that everyone is concerned about. And I think you as law-abiding firearm owners deserve that simple question to be answered. Can I also say as well that today was pretty disappointing in terms of hearing about One Nation's decision to not preference the Liberal Party. And I think, unfortunately, what that will do will elect more Labor MPs. It will make the state Labor government stronger, and it will reduce accountability for the government. And unfortunately, it will make them easier to bring in changes to gun laws after the election, and easier for them to get through the upper house. 25% of One Nation preferences flow directly to Labor because they refuse to preference the Conservative parties ahead of left-wing parties. And that's a fact, you can look that up. We have been clear that we will preference centre-right parties because that is in your best interest when it comes to these gun laws. We need to ensure that we are preferencing parties that have the same ideology as we do. So if you are not happy with the status quo, then I would really encourage you to vote Liberal, because ultimately, as lawful gun owners, you shouldn't be left worrying about what is going to come next. You need certainty, and you deserve transparency, and that's what you'll get with us. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Ricky Lambert from the Nationals. Thank you, Ricky. I'm going to pitch your seat.
Yeah, you go for it. Yep, g'day, Ricky Lambert here, running as the lead candidate for the Nationals in the Legislative Council, and I grew up just down the road from Nicola at Berry, another Riverland person, and I think Riverlanders know what it's like to be neglected by Labor. It's sort of scarred into us, and I went into politics. I used to be a lawyer, actually practising in the Riverland, not far from Nicola's dad. Used to defend firearms owners back then, amongst other things in general practice. Got involved in politics 20 years ago. And you see what Labor does up close, and you see what they stand for, and they are. We're here today because of deception and distraction and diversion. We saw this after the horrible massacre that happened, and as Gary has referred to earlier, Labor instantly looks at where they can settle some scores and get done what they want to get done. So they went for the distraction of targeting law-abiding firearms owners, which is the wrong approach because there were existing laws already in place in New South Wales that could have been enforced to deal with the real problem, which was radical Islam in Sydney. So we as the Nationals took the position that here in South Australia this election, we would oppose the buyback, and in fact in the federal parliament the Nationals opposed the buyback legislation as well. We've gone out and called on Peter Malinauskas to declare how much of South Australian taxpayers' money would be used for the buyback. Hasn't given a straight answer on that, even in the letters he's been sending people, about how much, not just yourselves as firearms owners, but all South Australians would have to pay towards that buyback. We opposed that buyback in Canberra. We opposed all the legislation the Prime Minister brought in, including the attacks on free speech that he used as his diversion and distraction from the real problems that they should have been dealing with in the first place. The Nationals also have been calling on Peter Malinauskas to publicly declare his policy, as we've been hearing about today, and we've seen all those weasel words, and I'm glad you mentioned Kelvin. I know Kelvin, he's from the Barossa. Kelvin Prescott's had a good look at that, and that's really, he's called it out the way we've seen it, that those words are weasel words. They are leaving themselves plenty of leeway to come and tackle your law-abiding use of firearms and restrict your rights. And we need to be vigilant about that, and that's what I'm very happy to stand for in the Legislative Council. The Nationals want to go a step further. First of all, we won't support any changes to firearms laws, full stop. We were very early in declaring that. Gary and others know that. We also wish to extend the right to have a 5-year renewal on your Category H licence. So we want to add to your laws that you have to have also the option for suppressors for firearms use for those that need them, particularly for farmers. We want that as well. And also want to preserve that right because we support families and your enjoyment of particularly sporting shooting as a family, that those 12 to 18-year-olds, we don't want that taken away. And we need to be very vigilant about Labor because they'll use any opportunity to wind back your rights as law-abiding firearms owners. So the Nationals stand with you. We are a very regionally based party, but we are informed by the farmers that use their firearms, and this nonsense that's come out of the federal debate, and I've seen it on the ABC. Why do people need 4 firearms? Why can't we restrict that? We don't support any reduction in the number of firearms you have. That's your right, okay? And on average, I think you've got about 4 or 5 firearms for every licensed owner in South Australia. Very happy to leave it that way. We need to be very clear, and I hope I've been really clear with you tonight about exactly where the Nationals stand, that we don't support any changes to those laws. And indeed, having worked in the Legislative Council before with Ray and Mick many years ago, happy to work with you and your representative organisations to even go further than what I've committed tonight in what you tell us as a united group you need by way of firearms reform. So thank you.
Now welcome to the stage Deepa Matthew from Family First. Thank you, Deepa.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you for the invitation today to speak. I thought I'd first start with a story on how I landed here in my firearm journey. It's a personal story. 16 years ago, my husband was sitting at the front, walked into the house with a firearm and a big gun safe in his ute, and I had no idea what was going on. My husband is an avid SSAA member. He was at the club at Marksman for many, many years, and now he's at the SSAA rifle range in Greenwood, I think. We are legal firearm owners. Not me, my husband, and I applied for my firearm license maybe 6 months ago. So did my daughter. We still haven't received it. I strongly...
Don't hold your breath.
No, I know. I found out that they're still processing applications from April. So I strongly believe more resources need to go into that space as well, because the government's trying to restrict firearm usage too. So Family First have always had a policy for firearms, even before Bondi happened. If you go up and look up on our website, we've had a national policy on firearms. We oppose any restrictions in the state towards any kind of restrictions towards your firearms in the state. Now, there is a huge risk though. If we have a Labour government, and possibly, or maybe a stronger Labour government in the next government, given that Labour has not promised to restricting firearms in the next government, we are under threat, firearm owners especially, that Labour will put through some form of restrictions through government, and they probably can put that through quite easily, and that's why it's really important to have an extremely strong upper house so that those legislations don't get through. As Family First, we support, We support all law enforcement activities that decrease the prevalence and impact of illicit firearms access and trade. We recognize the importance of hunting in reducing the impact of animal pest populations and the associated positive impacts on the environment, agriculture, and animal welfare outcomes. Now, my husband is an avid shooter too, so he goes out hunting and shooting with friends. You know, we go out to Broken Hill. So I really understand, and as a party, we really understand why this is hunting. Recreational hunting is also really important and helps communities and pest control too. We support maintaining the current National Firearms Agreement, and that constitutes a national approach to the regulation of firearms and supports genuine reasons of firearm ownership and usage. We oppose the departure of the NFA, the National Firearm Agreement, for example, in Western Australia. Western Australia's excessive and onerous changes to the gun laws in the state, especially by the Labor government. So please have a look at our website. I have a firearm policy over here, and support us at this election. Thank you.
Now, when Shannon walked in earlier, he told me, geez, I'm bloody nervous. And I said, well, we're all friends with you, Shannon. So from Sarah Games Fair Go Party, can we give them a real big round of applause to get the nerves out? Shannon, love you, get, mate.
You're all right. Thank you.
Thank you for having us here today and allowing the opportunity to speak with you as registered, lawful and responsible firearm owners. We're all reading from the same book, all right? I'm here representing Fair Go for Australians, South Australian MLC Sarah Game. We're a new party, but we're built on something that has been missing in politics for a long time: fairness, common sense and respect for ordinary people. Let me say this clearly. Responsible Australian citizen firearm owners are not the problem. You are not the headline. You are not the threat. You are farmers. You are members of clubs, sports shooters associations. You are competitors. You are collectors, and you uphold standards that most Australians never see. What we will not support is knee-jerk policy making. What we will not support is reactionary laws that punish the people who already do the right thing. And we will not support any government that tries to score political points by targeting licensed, vetted, responsible Australian citizen firearm owners instead of criminals. Fair Go for Australians believe in evidence-based regulation, consultation with clubs and associations before any changes are made, clear, transparent processes, not backroom decisions, laws that target criminal behaviour, not lawful ownership. A commitment to fairness so that responsible people are not treated like suspects. We are not here to influence culture wars. We're here to make sure that people who follow the rules are treated with respect. If Fair Go for Australians is elected in the upper house, you will have a direct line to someone who listens. Backed up by Sarah Game, you will have someone who understands the process and someone who will stand up when policy becomes political theatre. Thank you for the time you're having us here tonight and the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
All right, Mick, I think you're right now. No, you're right.
Right, I think what we'll do now, folks, is have a Q&A session. So, hang on. No, we've got one to go.
Sorry, mate.
I've got to go to queue. No, come on, Corey.
He's scared of what I might say. That's the problem.
Good on you. Thank you. Big round.
And I was going to thank you as well, mate. But quite genuinely, I do want to thank all of you and the organisers for tonight. It's rare to get so many politicians or wannabe politicians interested in actually firearms legislation and the rights of law-abiding gun owners. And I know that because I was once a non-firearm owning politician. And it was because of the activities of some people in this room and some people at other clubs and organisations that it prompted me about 16 years ago to go out and actually learn about getting a firearms license, and understanding what you had to go through in order to own firearms in this state. To be honest, I enjoyed the experience enormously, and now I have more than the requisite number of firearms, whether they be rifles or pistols. I enjoy shooting every single week. I like going hunting. And to be perfectly frank, in representing One Nation tonight, whilst I've heard some legislators talk about what they've done over the last 4 years, part of the reason I'm here is because I've been shooting dozens and dozens and dozens of rounds every week for the last 4 years, and I don't think people in Parliament are protecting my rights as a law-abiding sporting shooter. And that is the big challenge. Where are the voices that are actually going to stand up and say, hey, I live in this community, I do this stuff, this is how it's going to impact a business which is worth $20 billion or so to Australia. And already we're seeing just the uncertainty around the weasel words of the Premier, and we're all singing from a harmony sheet on that. We're seeing a downturn in business. We're seeing people saying, well, maybe I won't invest more in my sport or my hobby or my enjoyment, my recreation. And that's going to have a huge flow-on impact for tens of thousands of jobs that are generated by the firearms industry in this country. And I'm asking myself, where is the voice for my rights? I don't see it in the Parliament. In fact, quite the opposite. And unfortunately, as has been pointed out tonight, I don't see it in an organisational sense in many respects either. And so it's time for those 61,700 licensed firearm owners to put their voices, or make their voices heard, to put their shoulder to the wheel and to get out there and say, we've had enough. We are law-abiding people. We like what we do. It's a business for some of us. It's a recreation for others. And we want to stand up for our rights. Because mark my words, they'll come for whatever measure it will be now, and they'll use that as justification to plan further measures down the pipe. You can never appease the crocodile who wants to consume everything that you have. And so what I say to all of you is you need people who live and breathe and enjoy exactly what you enjoy in the Parliament. You need people who are going to have a very strong voice, a voice that is fearless, a voice that is not timid in the face of, a dominant Labor Party or a dominant, uni party operation. They're not going to be cowed. And I can promise you that One Nation, whether we have one voice, or we have two voices, or we have 5 voices, or we have 10 voices, we will be your voice. We will be the voice for South Australians. And I can't let this pass. The gratuitous insult levelled by my friend Nicola Centofanti, and I say she is my friend, about the preferences decision today. One Nation simply put out a statement saying that we would allow every voter to determine where their preferences go. It is not for One Nation to say you should preference the Liberal Party or the Labor Party or the Greens or Family First. That is your choice. We just want you to vote for us, number one. We trust the voters to make their own decisions. We think they can count to 12. And we think they can make these decisions for themselves based on their values. And you know what? Talk about the broad church. One Nation is a broad church because there's refugees from one side of the uni party and the other side of the uni party. They've come together because they're values-based. And that's what we are preaching to you tonight. We are a values-based organisation. We are using common sense. We are people from your community and every part of this community in South Australia. And we will be your voice for South Australia. And in closing, I'm going to echo what everyone else says. We don't want to change the firearms laws whatsoever. And we want to resource the SAPOL to make sure that they can process licence and process applications appropriately, that they can go through the process of ensuring who is fit and proper to hold a licence, because clearly there are some kooks out there that shouldn't have licences, as we've seen in Bondi and Sydney. But the answer to the kooks is not to penalise every single one of us. The answer is for us to stand together, to raise our voice and make a determination about our own future. And we can do that by influencing politics. And let me promise you this, your voice is my voice. And I will represent you, and Carlos will represent you in the South Australian Parliament and we will be the strongest voice you have ever had. Thank you.
I think another big round of applause for all the people that spoke tonight. I think all of them have got the common point. They are here to represent us, and there is an opportunity for you to preference who you like, right? So be it. Now, what?
We have preferences. Get rid of them. There's someone who thinks we should get rid of
First over the line, maybe. Yeah, it'd be good, wouldn't it?
take note.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, what I'm going to do now is roam around with the mic, roaming Gaz, and I'll be asking for questions from the floor that you can aim at our guests here tonight. So I'll come down and join you guys. Okay, this is working? Yep, great. We start. Are there any questions from the floor that you want to direct towards any particular person up on the stage? Hands up. Here we go. One question over here.
Yeah, hi fellas. Not being negative, but my name's Andrew Peters, just for the record, AA member, Secretary Security at Allied Services Firearms Club. If we can't get enough of you people in, which I imagine would be unlikely, personally, that's a sort of feeling I have, but just suppose we can't, if any real shit legislation comes in and then you do get in, would you reverse that at a later date when you do get in?
Who wants to start? Corey.
Yeah, 100%. If we don't have the balance of power to block bad legislation in the upper house, we're just going to continue to build our party, get stronger and better, and we will repeal grubby legislation whenever we can.
Now folks, would you like to hear a reply from each of our guests? Nicola.
Yeah, and I echo the same words. You know, we have committed to the same when it comes to the state voice. We didn't have the numbers, it went through, but we've said if we're elected on the 21st of March that we will repeal the voice. We do the same for this.
Ricky.
Yeah, the answer from the Nationals is yes as well, and it really highlights the importance of the Legislative Council, and that's why there are two houses of Parliament, because the Legislative Council is the brake on government. If Labor has both control of both houses, like if you believe the polling, then they will make a whole range of terrible changes like we're seeing in Canberra with the Labor-Greens alliance. So yes, the Nationals will help wind back those laws because Labor will try and push it this way, thinking it might only come back that far. We've got to come back to where we are now, and as I said earlier, even further in your direction.
Deepa.
Yes, Family First will repeal it. And I think Ricky has a great point. The only way you can get a really strong Legislative Council is by not voting for Labor in the Legislative Council. So you can have all of us there so that it does not get through. Thank you.
Shannon.
Yeah, thanks Andrew, that's a collective yes from us all.
That was a good question though. Okay, more questions from the floor. Just introduce yourself, please.
My name's David Brown. I've been shooting in clubs for 43 years, and I'm a collector as well. I've got a lot of guns, and when you say they're going to buy back to 4 guns, well, I shoot 30 different matches. So when you take down to 4, how can I compete with all the other gun competitions? It's impossible. Now, my question is to you guys, you know what goes on in Parliament and everything else. What, if Labor get is, what happens after the election? What can you do, even though Labor has taken over? Can you tell us what's going to happen after the election? You must have an idea what's going on in Parliament at the moment. So we'd like to know where we stand if Labor get back in.
Thanks, David.
I can start with that one, David. And look, I'd love to be able to tell you, but the reality is the only people that can tell you that will be the Premier and his caucus. And they're not being particularly upfront at the moment, and that really concerns us.
David, the questions you've asked just highlights what Gary was talking about earlier, that 61,000 plus of you need to be asking the Premier that very question, and that's why the Nationals have been trying to smoke him out for many weeks, because he's just giving these weaselly letters to people saying, oh, look, there's no current plans. But they've got every right, once they're in Parliament, to go and make the changes and restrict you to 4, as collectors have a lot more than 7 or 8 or 10, there's a lot more than that. And then there's no winding that back. Once they've forced you to sell them, you know what that's like from history in '96. So it's really important, as Gary was trying to say, you've got to ask those questions, raise those voices to Labor and try and squeeze a commitment out of them.
Eva.
Yeah, what we don't want from Labor is the last minute legislation that will come through, like what happened in federal government when the legislations came through. So I think it's really important to put pressure on Labor to ask them as to why, what is their policy now, because they obviously don't want to say it. And I won't be surprised if they have something in play for them to put through to the next government.
Shannon?
Thanks, David. It's a very awkward position to be in. It is. I can't predict the future of what it's going to be like if Labor do get in. What we can do is work as hard as we can to either try and reverse it, change. We can't predict it. We'll just do everything we can to help, be a voice, stand there and go, guys, this is not right. Yeah. All right. Thank you,
Shannon. Corey. I didn't forget you this time, Corey.
Yeah, that's good. I'm prepared to make a prediction. I think Labor will form government in a couple of weeks' time, and I'm not going to get very big odds on that. The thing that's going to save you and your voice is actually the Legislative Council, as Ricky said. And the Legislative Council is where legislation goes to be reviewed, it can be examined and it should be tested. It shouldn't be a rubber stamp for any government. And so I would suggest to you that is probably one of your most critical voting decisions about who do you want up there. As to what the Premier's intentions are, only he knows that, but his letter just gives us cold comfort because it is full of the tricky words that politicians use to say they're not doing something when they really are. And in my opinion, I think the Premier will take on gun laws and he will try to get away with whatever he can. He said at some point, and I'll paraphrase the words that I recall, that he will not be outdone on the strongest gun laws in the country by Premier Minns in New South Wales. That to me is a very clear statement of intent. And this is a Premier who likes baubles, he likes bells and whistles, he likes acclaim, he likes to protect his image, and he wants some sort of legacy. And if that means he'll come after law-abiding gun owners, I suspect he'll do it. So don't vote Labor, vote One Nation, that's the first thing I'd say. But do not vote Labor, right? And in the Legislative Council, make sure you choose wisely. Choose the people that are going to go in there and punch on your behalf and punch above their weight, because that is where your voice is going to be heard.
Thanks, Corey. Look, Rodney's got a question, but before I do, I thought it'd be timely just to remind you folks, you're voting for 11 people in the Legislative Council. So I concur with everything that Corey said, that I think Labor will, the Premier will be given his position through the House of Assembly. I don't think there's any question about that. But the review of any legislation happens in the upper house, the Legislative Council. So you need to consider the Legislative Council choices and preferencing very, very carefully. Indeed, if you don't, I think it'd be a very big challenge to ratchet back any clauses. I haven't seen any real ratcheting back, any reversing of gun law since I've been alive. They've all got ratchets on them. They don't ratchet back at all, folks. So be very mindful of that. I can't, we'll vote for them, but then we'll get in there in 3 or 4 years' time when you know, the Legislative Council changes because the other 11 members of the Legislative Council comes up in the next 4 years, and then you get the opportunity. Good luck repealing anything that gets through. That's my view. Rodney, one of the founding members. A big round of applause for this gentleman, folks.
Thank you very much. I'd love to stand up, but then the chances are I'd fall over. I'm 80 years old and I've been involved with this shit for over 50 years. I've been fighting firearms legislation since 1977.
You push the button.
I push the button. I'll hold it differently. I've been involved with Mark Card, Michael Hudson, where he's hiding, and various other people. Let me tell you, what you're doing today is no different from what we did in the late 80s and the early 90s, except we got 47,000 people in the St Clair Centre because we put an ad in the Advertiser. A little one, it cost $800 at the time, but it brought them out of the woodwork. We had buses arriving from Port Augusta, Whyalla, and lots of other places down south into Mount Gambier, and we forced the government via the police department to rein in their demands. They are not instant experts, although they have, the police department particularly, have set themselves up to be instant experts in anything they choose to be. But basically, they're a public servant that don't serve the public. They serve themselves and the government. But who is the government? Government is a group of people that we put there. Sometimes I think we made some god-awful mistakes. It was mentioned that there's 60-odd thousand licensed tutors, gun owners in the state. Back in this era where I was heavily involved, we had 165,000 licensed firearm owners in this state. And we put up a person to stand for the upper house, and he didn't get elected. So don't think that 60,000 is going to swing our way. Unless we get off our collective asses, I make no apologies for language, and actually talk to other people in our sphere of influence. I've been speaking since the meeting that was held out at the Adelaide Pistol Shooting Club, which is my home club, of which I'm a life member, and I was the chairman and treasurer for the period when that was actually built, and that's the best shooting range in Australia. The reality is that politicians are an interesting breed of people. You're smiling. You've been there, and you got to fair up the kind of past, didn't you?
Twice.
You should be learning by something by now. But anyhow, I digress. The thing that we can do, and we've only got like 2.5 weeks to do it in, is we have to talk to people. And I'm talking to all sorts of people, and because I'm slow, I have to hang on to them for support. They can't get away from me. And I ask them straight up front, who are you going to vote for? And particularly in the upper house. And they go, One Nation. I said, can I have that in writing? And that's the problem. You've got to get to them. And whilst we think we get to them at these meetings, the reality is we don't. May I suggest that the Combined Firearms Council actually spends the money and get off their butts and do some advertising. That what could be the result of doing nothing. Okay, all right. The other thing is, push for mandatory, non-remission sentences for people who criminally misuse firearms. 10 years for a first offence, 20 years for a second. It worked in Alaska, it can work in South Australia. Thanks, Robbie.
Any more questions from the floor before this battery runs out? Got Jim. Jim from Adelaide. G'day mate, how are you? Love your t-shirt. Look like that mate, we look like brothers, don't we?
Nice young fella gave it to me. Jim Innes from Adelaide Pistol Club. We have around 450 members. I'm the president, and there's quite a representation of Adelaide Pistol Club people here tonight. My question, and I can't see Mike Hudson, and he probably doesn't want to see me. There he is. My question is this, and I back up what former Chairman Gibb just said. Are we spending any money? What is SFOA doing between now and the election? Because I know what rolling with Nolan is like, because he's been going flat out, and everyone in this room needs to know what Gary's done in the last few weeks. He's organised social media. We've got a presence on social media. He was on 5AA this morning. He hasn't stopped. He's worked tirelessly, and we've raised money and we've spent it. And Rodney Gibb is 100% right. We need to spend money. We need more profile. It's great having you people here tonight, especially that big bloke with the orange tie. And we've got to keep going and keep pushing. I've been a shooter for 50 odd years. I'm a collector, and I'm a committed lunatic at Adelaide Pistol Club to carry on the work that was started out there. We're talking about a club that is as old as the ABC. 90 odd years old. 1933 we were formed. So it's an amazing situation we've got out there. It's a great property. Carlos and his guys had a shoot out there. Nicola and a lot of other members came out there. Their policy was delivered at Adelaide Pistol Club. So that's my question, Michael. What are you doing at SFOA? Where's the money?
Thanks. Thank you, Jim. Not being a politician, I'll answer you as best I can. So far, I was going to announce after the proceedings tonight, but Sandy raised the question. I'll do that now. Peter, can you change the slide, please, on the computer? While he's doing that, SFOA was formed last Wednesday. SFOA is an amalgamation of groups that represent the vast majority of shooting organisations in the state. Not all of them, but most of them. It has formed itself solely for the purpose of representing all the shooting groups who are linked to it as a representative group, as a one voice, to the next government. It tends not to do anything during the election cycle. It's going to do that after the government is formed. The government at the moment has refused to speak largely to anyone, and of course they're in caretaker mode now and can't, realistically. Though they will, no doubt, talk to their individual constituents and anyone else who bothers to knock on their door. In fact, today, CFC got a letter back from the caretaker police minister, basically saying exactly what he said to his members, what the Premier said, and what, of course, all the local members have said back to you people. There is no promises as such, there's just a statement. And I don't want to regurgitate the government's line, we know what it is. What we do know, however, is what the states and territories have stated since Bondi and what they intend to do if, obviously, they can agree on a number of issues. So I'll touch on those quickly. The National Firearm Agreements are being reviewed. Each state and territory are supposed to agree to have a buyback. That is not certain. There's a number of states that have already decided they want to have no part of it. One state in particular, Queensland. Other states have said a number of things, but of course, no one at this time in this state has disagreed to do that I'm aware of. So what's SAPOA going to do? It's going to do what the member groups demand it to do, and they will represent the views of all of us, largely all of us in this state. And that will be from the input of CFC by other groups who are members. And the membership is up on the screen there now. Their logos are there. A lot of you members in this, or you people in this room, are members of one or more of those organisations. But right now, SAPOA will not be doing anything until after the election. Thanks, Jim.
I hope you won't mind me saying, Michael, that you said as you stepped to the dais that you weren't a politician, but you sure sounded like one with that response. I didn't really get what I wanted from that, but my opinion is my opinion, and my opinion is that we need to do this weeks ago. That was the crux of the meeting at the Duke of Brunswick, and we've been moving, we've been doing something, and it's making a difference. And okay, someone said about we only have 61,000 gun owners and we won't make much difference, but we've got friends. And if you look at our website, we've had 200,000 hits almost, so we can hope that those people support us. Thanks for your response. It's not really what I want to hear. I want to hear that SAPOA are in there working hard, but they're not really doing that. I think Foxar is, and I think this is the best way we can go, and money is what we need. Thanks for answering my question, and thanks to everyone in the political field that's turned up, and I hope we get there, I hope we win, but like everyone else, I understand the Legislative Council is the only place that we're going to make a difference, so everyone needs to remind themselves of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Any quick questions before this battery goes flat? Brandy, you got a question? So, Steve, you can introduce yourself, mate.
My name's Steve Brown. I've been around pistol shooting and firearms for a very long time. Sorry. And I'm one of these blokes that's probably going to lose a fair amount of firearms. But I think we're losing something else, not just firearms. I think we're losing freedom. I think we're losing what Australia stood for. I went to high school at Norwood Tech. I used to have to go home from Norwood Tech and stand at the number 4 bus stop in King William Street. I had a 303 over my shoulder and a hat. I didn't get pulled over. I got tapped on the head by a little old lady saying, "Good boy." How many people in this room go away and go to the country? Every city, every town, Rifle Range Road, Para, Rifle Range Road. Every town, Rifle Range Road. Why? They needed us. Let's hope they don't need us again, because there's not a lot that are going to help. We are losing so many things. We can't go camping here. We can't go fishing. We can't do this. We can't do that. Slow change. Sneaky, sneaky, takey monkey. They just take the things away from us. And all of a sudden we're going to wake up and we're going to be gone. Australians are going to be finished. We'll be living like the guys on the eastern states do. And I don't consider those people to be living an Australian life like we do in South Australia. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Any questions, folks? Any more? Before I hand it over to Mick again for the closing, who have we got? Over here. Please introduce yourself.
My name's Paul Childs. I was in security for over 11 years, trained in all forms of firearms, belonged to the SSAA, and my family is a military family, and I'm not happy with what happened before, and I'm not happy with what's happening now. My question at the moment is for the Liberal Party. We were let down by the Liberals recently when they sided with Labor over the free speech. How do we know that you're going to stand by us now and not do the same thing again?
Thank you for that question. And look, what I can say to you is that please have a look at what we've done over the last 4 years. We are the State Liberal Parliamentary Team, and as a State Liberal Parliamentary Team, and I mentioned it in my speech, the range of ways that we have stood up for shooters and hunters right across South Australia. So that's something that, you know, I haven't just dreamed up overnight. I've been fighting for you. We've been fighting for you over the last 4 years. And I am a woman of my word. Those people that know me know that I'm a woman of my word. And when I say that we will not support any changes to the gun laws, we will not.
Thanks for your question, Paul. I mentioned it earlier that was in the federal parliament where that vote happened, and I just have to emphasise the Nationals voted against that, and that split the coalition. And we had Nationals ministers, shadow ministers, who lost their jobs over that. That was how important free speech was to the Nationals. And when they said that those senators are losing their jobs, we made it clear to Susan Lee, the then leader, if they lose their jobs, we all lose them on that issue of free speech. And that's what happened. And I lost my job as a result of that as well, because I work in federal politics with the Nationals. So that's what is really important to the National Party, is protecting your freedom.
The front.
Gary Bradley, not a question, a statement. In 1770, a French scientist, philosopher, who's world famous today, his name's Voltaire. We know him from faults in electricity. Voltaire stated, "I may vehemently disagree with what you have to say, but I will fight to the death for your right to say it." And I had bumper stickers made up, and that's stated on them, and it says, "Full freedom of speech is full democracy." So there's just something to think about. 1770, the problem was identified by a scientist. The government's gone backwards since there, haven't they? Thank you.
I think it's just about having folks, the microphone's on. Luckily I can speak fairly loudly. Is there one gentleman over here who's been waiting to chat, but I think here we go, back on.
Hello everyone. My name is Bradley Warren. I'm the candidate for Torrens for the United Voice Australia. We agree and also want to improve these laws, and this gentleman also mentioning about freedom. Every freedom we have is under threat, and we need to protect that. That is probably more fundamentally important than just gun laws. We've got social laws, we've got hate speech, we've got social cohesion. How do we achieve social cohesion without everybody having a say and being labelled a threat because we don't have a particular opinion that is aligned with the government of the day? That is not a democracy. So that's just a brief introduction, and I will leave it at that. If anyone wants to talk to me about where I'm from and what I'm on about, please do. Again, Bradley Warren, United Voice Australia, Torrens electorate. Thank you.
Thanks for standing. Good stuff. Anything else, folks? Moving along. Any question over here, sir?
Not a question, but a statement that I want everyone to think about. Darryl Linkick, Black Firearms Services. I've been a shooter and now business owner in the firearms industry for quite some years. In 1997, after the Port Arthur massacre, I lost 5 guns because the government said that I wasn't to be trusted with them. Now, I've been a shooter for 37 years. I've got quite a few guns. I work in emergency services. I've worked in the Australian Defence Force. I think I can be trusted. After that event, I made a solemn vow never again to vote for the Federal Liberal Party because I have a long memory. And they treated me and all shooters across the country unfairly when they brought in those laws. I've traditionally been a Labor voter, but I will certainly not be voting Labor for the state election this time because I fear that Labor are going to do exactly what the Federal Liberal Party did in '97. Whoever you vote for, and hopefully you vote for someone who is going to oppose these laws, make sure that your memory is long. Because if someone, any party that gets in, changes our laws and treats us like criminals for the actions of a few, then remember that always and don't ever vote for that party again. Thank you.
We're just getting warmed up, or have we got any more questions? The bar opens in a minute there. G'day, mate. Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's fine. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, g'day guys, I'm Tim Arch, I'm the Lower House candidate for Morpeth for One Nation. Look, I know I'm wearing the top tonight, but I'm wearing the top first and foremost because I'm a shooter. My question is for Nicola. After the events of December 2025, the Minns government in New South Wales introduced an act called the Terrorism and Other Legislation Amendment Bill, and that bill set the stage for the forced confiscation of firearms in New South Wales, as well as the reclassification of firearms into different categories, and broadly all of the other changes that are happening over there now. In my opinion, the introduction and the passing of that act emboldened other state governments to get on board. We're now seeing that sort of sweep across the country. My question is for Nicola. How did the Liberal Party vote in New South Wales on the Terrorism and Other Legislation Bill?
I'd say that's probably a question for the New South Wales Liberals. I can tell you as the leader of the opposition here in South Australia in the upper house, I can tell you our position and how we have said that we will vote here in this state. I too would just like to ask a question because I think there has been a lot of emphasis on the upper house and the importance of the upper house vote. So I would just like to ask One Nation what they'll be doing in the upper house.
I'm happy to say if I'm elected to the upper house, I'll go in fighting tooth and nails. I'll be a voice. I won't be asleep at the wheel for 4 years wondering what they're going to be doing and wondering when it's my turn to be in government. I'll go out there and fight as hard as I possibly can. This is base political rhetoric, right? The Uni Party get together every 4 years and they decide that they're going to have bickers and squabbles, and then they go into Parliament and they go, oh, hang on, we'll just sit around and wait for 4 years until it's our turn maybe to govern. You cannot reward laziness. You need people that are going to go in there and hustle and fight for the rights and the freedoms that we all take for granted and that some governments and some politicians want to take away from us. It's as simple as that. And you need people who have the courage to do it and are going to swing at everything that comes their way and say, this is wrong on your behalf. So what are the One Nation going to do in the upper house? Let me tell you, if I'm there, you'll have that voice. If Carlos is there, you'll have a different voice. I'm scared of his voice, it's so loud sometimes. And if we get a third one, maybe we'll have the balance of power and we'll be able to get some common sense back into that place called State Parliament. That's what we'll do there, Nicola.
We hear a lot about not changing it. What about upgrading it? Has anyone got any ideas on that? Like, how do we protect it in the future?
We could deport the terrorists. That would start. We could, start to actually fund the appropriate processes so we can expediently process licenses, do background checks, do the things that are necessary, and so we will have those who are law-abiding citizens rewarded for it. Everyone's going to have a different view on this, quite frankly, and I've heard lots of them. I've heard people who want to be able to use pistols for hunting. That's been no longer allowed. There's all sorts of cases in which you could justify changing the laws, but quite frankly, right now, I think they work pretty well. And that's as someone who enjoys all of the laws right now, both handguns and long arms. I think they work pretty well for us.
Thanks, Corey. Look, I think it's going to be an opportunity for everyone after this closing to meet with your local members through to the people in the upper house and ask a question. So on that note, you ready to close the meeting? And then after that, then we can sort of mingle with each other. You know who these people are now. You can go up and ask them the relevant questions, because I think there'll be a lot more questions once the people start mingling. You've got a big stick on me, I know that, mate. So would you like to do the closing here?
All right, thank you, Gary. Look, just in closing, I'll just reiterate some of the key points that our speakers tonight have mentioned. Yes, the Legislative Council is a vital part of our democracy. It's a house of review. It reviews the legislation of the government of the day in our House of Assembly. Generally, the government of the day will put forward bills, sometimes in conjunction with the opposition, very rarely, depending on the numbers the government has in the House. If the government is elected with a large majority, then they can virtually say and do whatever they want. But the House of Review, our Legislative Council, can counter that. And so it is absolutely vital that when you vote, as we do in both houses, that you make an informed judgment. Now, our guest speakers here tonight, representing the parties involved, have given you their views. All of them are giving us views that support firearm ownership. The government says that too. The unfortunate thing is we have party politics in this country. We also have a federal government who can use fiscal threats to the state to badger them to doing things that they might not want to do. Let's be realistic. We go back to Howard's first prohibitions after Port Arthur. Before the bodies were even carted away and the blood was wiped up at Port Arthur, they were talking about bans and prohibitions. Yes, it took a few weeks and months to put into place, but largely what the Prime Minister said at that time was agreed to by all the political parties in the federal government. It became a bipartisan agreement, and all states and territories followed suit for a number of reasons. In lots of cases, because of that fiscal threat. If you don't do what I want, was the Howard mantra of the day, then we'll do it behind the scenes. And if you and I did that in business on our normal being or living way, we would be charged with offence and put in jail, because that's blackmail. That's the reality of politics. Make no bones about it. It's the same thing in the States. If a government gets elected with enough majority, they can put forward through any bill they like in the lower house. But when it gets to the House of Review, the Legislative Council, if they don't have the power in that house, then the members who are elected can either amend, blunt it, or stop it altogether. It very rarely happens, but it can happen. It can happen also that the Legislative Council can actually stop regulations. Once a bill is passed in the lower house and is passed in the upper house, in general terms and for firearm legislation, we have to have regulations that govern the Act. And those regulations in the last two lots of legislation that we have from 1977 to 1980 took 3 years to write. The last lot between 2015 and 2017 took 3 years to write. And that's where organisations like CFC and other groups and now SAFOA will play their part. So I don't know what the future's going to be. I can't predict the outcomes of the Legislative Council. But I can tell you this, if a government gets power in both houses, there is very little any of the members on this stage, if they do get elected, can realistically do. It then becomes up to us to use whatever voice we have to browbeat, to convince, or whatever we can do through our local members and through our Premier and ministers to try and get at least some semblance of good that will affect us. But let's be brutally honest. If every state and territory rewrites the NFAs and agrees to a buyback, if it's fair and just, no state and territory is going to be able to afford it. This state is probably broke. The government will not admit to that. But we have wasted so much money in the last 4 years on fruitless projects for greening the country and the other nonsense. For us, as firearm owners, we're also hunters, we're also four-wheel drivers, we're also fishermen, we're also outdoor recreational people. Everything we want to do, just about everything we want to do, has more regulation, more reduction, and in some cases outright prohibition already put on us. Because there hasn't been, in my view, sufficient debate in our Parliament to stop it from happening. Or in the case of the Legislative Council, where the government can use its numbers and also use its proxies, and I use that term loosely, minor parties that agree with the government, and they get paid off by getting committee chairs, speakerships, and all the other things that parliamentary tactics allow, so they get their views passed through both houses. And that will happen again if the Legislative Council, we give the balance of power to the government of the day. So I can't predict the outcome. I know what I'd like to see, but I do know this. If the government has control of both houses, democracy finishes for 4 years on the 21st of this month. So you and I and everyone we talk to, if you want your freedoms, you want to own your firearms the way we do, then you've got to get off your bums, just like I will and have and do, to do what we can about it. But the only thing we can do on the 21st of March is vote our conscience. Vote for the people that you believe can make a difference. Hopefully bring that semblance of difference to the Parliament. We can only do that by exercising that vote. I'm not going to tell you how to vote, not even personally or as a group representative. It's entirely up to you. Voting is a precious individual thing. So, to finish it tonight, I want to thank all the speakers. I want to thank their other groups that came representing them as well. I wish them all the best in the election. I want you to go away and think how you vote. I want you also to support the groups that are supporting you. I'm not going to tell you the outcome, but I can tell you this, I will do what I can on your behalf when the government is formed to present your view, both through CFC and our other member groups, and through the alliance that has now been formed, and hopefully we can make a difference. And hopefully you all can help to do that. So thanks very much for coming. I'd like you now to mingle around if you want. The bar is now open. Gary wants to say something about his group, that's fine. He can do that in a second. But come forward, talk to some of the reps here tonight. Have a drink, help support the local club, the social club here, and as I've said, make sure your vote counts. Thanks very much.
Thanks again, Mick. Now, Mick promised that I can just chat to you people. If you can just hang around for a couple more minutes, just so I can get a point across to you. 1996, there were some good issues raised here that since 1996 we've done bugger all, but there's a big difference now, and that's called social media. So social media has the ability to reach a lot of people very, very quickly. So Foxar is the other group. That's the group that I kicked off 7 weeks ago. Oh, it wasn't named, only a few weeks ago. But what we want to do tonight, folks, is I'm going to ask you for a favour. I don't want any titles. I'm not getting paid for this job. I don't want to be a politician. All I want to do is protect our rights. That's all I want to do. In return tonight, I want two favours. So the first favour is we need to send a clear message to the government. And what I'd ask you to do is to get your phones out. All get your phones out. Everybody, get their phones out. We want to record this on as many phones as we possibly can, and we want to send a clear message to everybody. So, once you get your phones out, put it on video and video what we're going to do. It's a little bit of a stunt, but what I'm going to do, at the count of 3, I'm going to ask you all to hold your phones up and scream at the top of your voice, we can't deal with what ifs, we need certainty. Turn around to that camera where Bob is at the back. Bob's waving. G'day, Bob. And we are going to publish this on social media. So in a matter of 5 days, just on Facebook, I haven't got the other results yet, Facebook, we've got close to 220,000 views and already 450 followers. Now, we want to put that on steroids over the next 2 weeks. We need money. We want to put the whole program on steroids. We want to disrupt the upper house. I can say this now because I'm now no longer confined to what I can say. We're taking the gloves off. We're having another meeting next week at the Club Marion, where we're going to have a guest presenter, and we're going to have champion shooters that will be interviewed by this guest presenter. I'll be confirming that in the next couple of days. I'm just waiting for a phone call tonight. But the group that I'm involved in, we are going to disrupt. I'm not making any apologies about that, folks. So at the count of 3, can we yell out, we can't deal with what ifs, we need certainty. And look at that camera when you say it. Come on, folks, up you stand. All the pollies, up you go. Come on, we can't deal with certainty. None of us can. We need certainty. We can't deal with this what if bullshit. All right. 1, 2, 3. We can't deal with what ifs. We need certainty. Okay, again, that was pretty pathetic. You ready again, Bob? We can't deal with what ifs. We need certainty. 1, 2, 3. We can't deal with what ifs. We need certainty. That's great, guys. So thanks very much for doing that. The next thing you can do, my second big favour, including our friends over here in the Liberal Party and our friends over here in the One Nation, and we've got Shannon and Deepa and thank you, Ricky and Corey and Nicola. Can you please, while you've got your phones out, hit follow to this, to Foxar. So whatever social media you like, can you please, this is the way we're going to do it in the year 2026, guys. We are going to disrupt this election. We are going to disrupt this election by the use of social media. Now, if you can't do that, you might as well give your guns up now, right? That's the deal. This is it now. It's 30 years we've been waiting for this day. This is it. If you're not prepared to do it, you might as well start negotiating how much you want for your guns, because that's really the price, guys. Okay, so the gloves are coming off. I've got my boxing gloves on my bag over there, and we'll not be pulling any punches next week. So it's going to be a very different format. I implore upon you all to turn up at the Club Marion. next week, 262 Sturt Road, and we want a big crowd there. Now, I've spoken to most of the people here, and they can attend, or they'll have someone else from their party attend. We'll have a well-known special guest comparing the show with well-known world champions. So this is going to rev it up a fair bit next week. It's going to be convened by Foxar. So please get behind us. Get that social media happening tonight. I'm done. The media, hopefully, mate, would love to. I was fortunate enough to be asked to speak on 5AA this morning, so you can go to the podcast and listen to what we had to say. I spoke with, well, it starts a little bit. So I started 7 weeks ago at the Sturt Pistol Club, and now we've got to this point here. We've got 250,000 views on Facebook, and we've got 450 followers. But we need to rev that up to a couple of million, folks, by the 21st of March, and have a real effect on the election. Remember, we can do that. Don't have any regrets after. So, folks, that's enough for me. I'm going to go and have a beer in a minute. But anything from the photographer? Yes. So Bob's the professional photographer. He did some great footage this week. You may have seen it on the social media. We had Libby Cosmala, we had the Fegan kids, Naomi and her brother James. We had a couple of guys from our club. We had Dave Chappie, Dave Chapman, champion shooter. Dave Porter from Maitland. He shot at state national level. So we've got 12 people that we filmed, and Bob took the photography, and it was some great photography. But again, thanks to you all guys for doing what you're doing for yourselves. Without you guys, we're going to be buggered. So we've got a real chance of you making an effect. Thanks.